The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
And we're standing by for the book From Forgery to Treason. And I'm like so many other people, and I think anybody who listens to the show, I don't think you can come to any kinds of conclusions about who, in fact, Barack Obama is. It's impossible. And I have been accused, as many birthers have, of being a racist because I dare ask for the truth about the man's life. His Hawaii birth certificate, and it goes on from there, and all the different statements that have been made and things that we can never know. So I'm standing by. We will have with us the book From Forgery to Treason. So let's just jump ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please say good morning and welcome to Denver, Colorado. His name is Douglas Voigt. Hey, Mr. Voigt, good morning and welcome to Denver, 710 KNUS, and thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. I've been in Denver a couple of times.
And, yeah, I think we know probably about 20 people in common. So I wanted to
I see.
at least. We have up on
sure of it.
Up on our website this morning, we have placed, again, it always remains up there, the so-called, as they call it, the COLB of Barack Obama. Before we begin, would you do a little background of yourself so people get a sense of who you are?
Oh, sure. I owned a typesetting company for about 10, 11 years. Also a writer, member of the Geological Society of America. My background was also accounting. I then bought and own a company called Archive Index Systems in Washington State here, where we sell document scanners and also the software, Adobe Acrobats and Photoshops and other graphic software. And I've been doing that for over 20 years. Paul Irie, who is the other expert that had owned a large typesetting company in New Jersey and in New York City. He was in the graphics business for about 50 years, including a Photoshop too, photography service. And so collectively we have 83 years experience in the graphics industry, ranging from type to photography to scanners and software. Paul, in fact, had one of the very first beta versions of Photoshop when it first came out in the 80s. And the first one I know that did color separations on his Macintosh instead of stripping them in and stuff like that. He was really one of the first to have it.
So
that's our experience. We actually do know what we're doing.
Well, I was going to say, it's, what's that great thing? You had me at open. When did the light go on for you and for your partner that Barack Obama, to a high degree of probability, on so many different levels about his life story, is simply not telling the truth?
It's actually from his own writings and stuff. First, when he was running for senator, and he did his book, on his own book stuff, the publisher sends off a questionnaire to the authors, and they fill it out. The author fills the stuff out, and there he winds up saying he was born in Kenya. When he went to Kenya to support his uncle, who's a raving left-wing Marxist, support him with money too, he said he was happy to be home. And the Kenyan newspapers said he was born there. The two parliamentarians have it in their official, like their congressional record. I have the printout from their official record. One was the Interior Minister, and they both wound up saying he was born there in Kenya. So they wouldn't lie. No. They had the evidence, and one of the reasons I think they came out with that is because they knew he was on the side of his relative, who was a raving communist, who was causing major problems.
They
were slaughtering and burning churches in Kenya.
Absolutely.
Yeah, real nice guy.
Which ties back into his best man and half-brother, Malik or Malik. But let me...
Yeah, Roy.
His
original name was Roy Obama.
That's right. AKA,
there's a funny story about that also.
Well, if you would, it's AKA Roy. Tell me about it, because he has the Barack H. Obama Foundation, tax-free in Maryland. Talk about AKA Roy, but it's Malik or Malik Obama, the best man and half-brother at at the wedding of Michelle and Barack. Talk about him if you could for a moment.
Yes, and of course you left out also a member of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Oh no,
too.
there's pictures of him. Yeah, he's in.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, no, for the folks in the audience, we've been over this a couple
It's
times.
very simple. One of the points of forgery on the birth certificate is the age of the father, Barack Hussein Obama Sr. It was put down as 25. The Barack Obama Sr. was actually born June 18th, 1934. And he had to fill out papers when he entered the country. We have actually the copies of his entry papers and papers to the Department of Justice for extending his stay in the United States to be a student, a foreign student. And that's the key word, foreign student. And after late 62, 63, he started putting down his birth date as being 1936. So he was really 27 years old when the baby was born, not 25, and that's a point of forgery because no one screws that up when the nurse asks you how old you are, you know. And the reason is that I had to find the reason, and it was because to be considered a foreign student, you have to be between the ages of 14 and 26, not 27. So he lied when he applied to go to Harvard to show he's a foreign student.
Or
that's why. Now,
is it conceivable?
Now, on these forms, this is the funny part. About not even a year after supposedly Barack Jr. is born, he fills out the form, and the line that it says, "Are you married?" has blank, and where it's if so, you have any children. He puts Roy Obama. At no place does he put Barack Obama as his son. He doesn't take credit for the kid.
And
so
if I could interject, because you're so wonderful, I want to interject and ask questions, Doug. Was he even at the hospital, and what hospital is going to be talked about as well, but was he even there when the baby was born? In other words, he had no, I mean, in spite of that idiot governor of Hawaii, there's no one that remembers Barack as a senior talking about his new wife and his baby or anything like that. Was it conceivable that he simply wasn't even around when Barack was born?
No, I don't think so either. I don't think he was there.
Yeah, I don't either.
But and nobody will know. But there is a reason why Ann Dunham did not give birth here and gave birth in Kenya, and it has to do with the father, Stanley Dunham. Stanley Dunham his cover was that of a communist. When he was here in Seattle in the 50s, he went to the Little Red Church in Mercer Island, just a few miles away from us. And the reason why it's called Little Red Church is because it's loaded with a bunch of left-wing Marxists. And the CIA is not supposed to spy domestically, but the agency did because they didn't trust the FBI. In fact, the nickname for the FBI and the CIA is fumbling, bumbling idiots.
Yeah, I'm currently reading a new book on the FBI, and we know that Nixon used the FBI, turned them on the American people. That was what they were not tasked to do, correct? They were all about foreign intelligence, but I know they were looking at these guys, correct?
Yeah, they were looking for, well, he was there to look for communists who were worked at Boeing because they wanted to make sure the plans for the B-52 bomber, which was being built then, was not going to be stolen. So he was then transferred to Hawaii to spy on Frank Marshall Davis, because Davis had caused a dock strike in 48 that lasted 6 months. And the Vietnam War was about to start, and they knew that Hawaii was going to be a staging area, and he tried to do the same thing there, and he did succeed in 63. He had a short strike, and then the federal government ended the strike, if you remember. So he was there to spy on them. Now, the joke with the daughter and stuff like that is this. Agents don't tell their kids, hey, guess what? I'm in the CIA and I'm spying. He had to keep his cover story, and I assume his wife knew what he was also. There was a well-known program in the CIA that paralleled the Russian one, that they would bring bright students from Africa to either Moscow or to the United States to get an education, and theoretically they were going to be pro-Russian or pro-American. And it was a well-known story, well-published, that the CIA was doing this, and Barack Obama Sr. was brought over on this program. So when he landed at the airport, here's this alleged furniture salesman standing right next to him on to the right of the picture of Obama, right next to him, and greeting him with all these layers around his neck and stuff like that. He was the handler of Barack Obama. So once his lovely daughter winds up getting pregnant by his target, Frank Marshall Davis,
you believe? Hey, let me stop you again.
Communist.
I'm going to stop you again if I can. We have talked at great length about Frank Marshall Davis and his relationship and what they all do. Do you believe that Frank Marshall Davis is the biological father of the president?
Is the sun hot?
Do bears do things in the woods?
Yeah, it looks like him. He has the same line underneath his chin.
Dead bang.
Same nose.
Dead bang.
Same hairline.
Dead bang. Who took the pictures, the nude pictures of Stanley Ann?
It had to be Stanley. It had to be
Frank
Marshall Davis. Who else? It's his house.
It's his floorboards. That's right.
Yeah, and But by the way, Barack Obama knows it's his father. Yeah. During the campaign, just before the election, they had a contest. If you entered this contest, gave money, you could have lunch with Barack. And Barack winds up writing a line in the blurb. I have it. It says, "My father taught me the great love of jazz." Yeah. Well, Frank Marshall Davis used to teach jazz in Chicago.
Yeah, right.
It certainly was the African guy.
Right. No, it wasn't senior. No.
So he knew. He knows it. What it was is, I think, the Communist Party was so indebted to Frank Marshall Davis, they anointed this guy. Other than that, Barack Obama Jr. is an idiot. He's rather stupid. He gives a great speech. He was taught how to speak that way by an actor, and who admitted that's what that he taught him. And he's just a frontman. He's an empty suit. It's who's behind him I want to go after in the lawsuit I have filed. So that's basically it. He's just a front man. He's an empty suit.
I see. Here it is. Just if you just joined us, good morning, everyone. As we say, the circle gets wider and wider of people who have, as we say, come to the dance. I've been accused of being a birther for, I don't know, a decade and being a racist because I dare ask questions about all of this. And on the line with us, From Forgery to Treason, again, another book. And there have been now, the gathering of people has become greater and greater. Douglas Voigt is our guest. Let me ask you a question. I've been reading the woman you mentioned. Her name is Miriam Godrich, and she was, and now is a partner with Distal Godrich Agency, which lists Barack Obama as one of its clients, one of her current clients. Now, you point this out, that if we go back in time when she was the literary agent for Barack Obama, and I want you to come back and spend more time with this, but you're absolutely correct. I mean, when people send these things to their agents, they fill out their own bios, and indeed we've seen it where Barack Obama said he was born in Kenya, not Hawaii. Now, I believe he was born in Hawaii, but at this point I'm open for anything. But it's interesting where then they bring that to her, and she now has a big firm of her own where she's a partner, and she said, well, she said, I made a mistake. I edited the text of his bio. Now, she never says she wrote it. She says she edited the text of the bio, and that's where for all of those years, I was born in Kenya appeared. And now, of course, she has been given, great, how do I say this, great gifts from the Democratic Party for publishing different books. Yeah, well, money's a good way to say it. But, it was, here he was. He's saying that, and now she claims that she wrote the bio, and as you point out, and others have pointed out, agents don't write bios. You write your own bio. But here's another example. What do you do with that, Doug?
It's only a minor thing. If she's says that, she makes herself an accessory after the fact. By the way, regarding the book From Forgery to Treason, We're still, between Paul and myself, we're still writing the thing. Paul owes me 2 chapters. What you see on the website, ObamaForgeryBook.com, is the affidavits and the 20 points of forgery of the thing. We didn't use the PDF copy only for proving how the thing was put together. We used a very high resolution copy from ABC News that went to the news conference in the morning of April 27th of 2011, and it was about 600 DPI, and then they saved it at 300. It was good enough for us to do all the analysis. Remember, we're 2 typesetters, and we knew what the stuff can do and what the scanners can do and everything like that. So we have the irrefutable proof. Nobody has disagreed with us. Even the Obots are scared of what we know. I even know who the forger is, and told the sheriff's office when I was invited there a year and something ago, or 2 years ago. And it's that complete. What's wrong on the thing is everything from the registration date of August 8th, it should have been the 11th or 12th, to the certificate number was stolen from Virginia Sonahara's birth certificate, to letter spacing, line spacing, word spacing. 16 different letters we have 2 fonts for. In other words, it came from 2 different typewriters.
I agree. Let me if I could once again put a question in here. If you're just joining us, from Forgery to Treason, our guest here on 710 KNUS, Douglas, I should have said that, Voigt is our guest. Because we all touchstone different people, I would like to do this, and I came up with this idea about 7-8 months ago, and I think there's one guy that could really put it together. You know, in academia, they have symposiums and seminars, and people then present white papers on the back of it. What would the odds if we got you and got your colleague, and if we got Paul, and I can think of 100 people, and I'm trying to reach, of all people, Donald Trump, because he's the one guy that could underwrite this, and he's the one guy that took a lot of hits because he was with us for the long time, and still remains, I guess, a foot in the fight that Obama's life story is crooked. If there was something like that, and we put all of these investigators like yourself together, what do you think would come out of that?
One, the media probably wouldn't report it.
That's
because
true.
The media appears to be controlled. And we think it's controlled actually by the CIA. If any of your guests or yourself look up on Google or Wikipedia Operation Mockingbird, which started during the Truman administration, and the Church Committee you look up the Church Committee, and during the Church Committee, the CIA had a budget then, 35 years ago, of over $3 billion to wind up paying editors and publishers what to publish. They would give them articles to publish. There was more to the story. Paul knew an editor from one of the ABC, it was either ABC, NBC, or CBS, and Paul hasn't told me which one, because the guy said that they're in fear of their lives. If they publish something they're not supposed to, they're threatened. And I actually believe it. You can tell by the nature of the articles that get produced that we have controlled news.
Well,
I could cite 2 important news stories of the last week that never hit U.S. news and should have. Never hit it.
for instance?
One was the Israelis seizing an Iranian ship with about 70 medium-range rockets from Iran, 400,000 rounds of ammunition, and hundreds of mortar shells, all seized, never showed up in any of the news media, including Fox. Nobody reported. The other one, which was much more damaging, which gives you an idea how much the Saudis hate this guy in the White House. They told Oman that you're going to shut down all of Al Jazeera's offices worldwide, throw out the Peabody as well as the Iran Corporation out of Qatar, and no longer support Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Al Qaeda in Syria, etc. A whole bunch of things.
Right.
That never hit our news at all. I had to read that in Depka file in Israel National News. No. I don't get any news here anymore. It's a joke.
Well, I agree with you about the national press, but we still have, I don't know, modestly he says, this radio station, and the one I worked at before, we have been dead bang on this story for a decade, and having people like yourself on and others on, even when this began as a whimper, and no one has ever stepped in and said, you can't do this, and I think we're closer and closer to at least some sense of what this guy is all about and who he is, because I think if you can discover that, it's like it's the Rosetta Stone, you will be able to uncover other things as well. But having said that, could a symposium work? And I don't want to take you off track here, but
it would, if you can get some publicity. With the sheriff's office, Mike Zulo, who I know personally,
sure, I know Mike,
said he had reporters come up to him and say that they would be fired if they report the story.
I absolutely believe that. I know that part of it. I believe.
And he told you also. I'm sure he told you too. He told everybody.
Yeah.
That we have controlled news. That's the problem. Well, so, you can have one, but will you get publicity?
Here's the question I ask is, have they been so entrenched? Because, as you know, Barack Obama cops the nomination here in Denver. And even then, before the people came up and we now have, when this was all put together, I should say it that way, they had notary publics come up and stamped all this stuff. No one ever asked him any honest questions when they put him together. And so they have indulged this guy for so long and their inability to say that they were wrong remains. And so, there are people that will just sit there and say, no, the story's true, but they won't go, the elephant in the living room, they won't go in the living room to look. Having said that, I want to move, I'm close to a pause. I'm going to set this question up. I believe that this birth certificate was manufactured by the guy that I've called Jimmy down the hall. He's a politically correct kid, and he can't put, like, Negro down or that kind of thing, and he comes up with a bizarre race that doesn't exist and all the other things. When this woman makes the night flight to bring something that could have easily been sent over the Internet, the so-called...
Crowley.
That's right, and she works for a law firm. It's a Perkins Coie, right?
Perkins Coie.
Coie, all right.
Yeah, they're here in Seattle.
All right, and that guy, he was Barack Obama's lawyer. And when she makes this...
Yeah, right.
She makes this flight...
Robert Bauer.
Right, absolutely. Now, do you think for a second, Douglas, that she brought anything back to D.C., or it was already there, good to go? We'll come back with you. Douglas Voigt from Forgery to Treason, 710 KNUS. Douglas Voigt is here. Just as a programming note, as I mentioned, I've been reading the work about the original Obama agent and what was said, and she's going to be on the radio show with us tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. And is going to talk about how they changed, how the literary people had to change Barack Obama's bio, and now they're actually falling on the sword by saying they did it. I'm fascinated by that stuff, Doug. Are you not? That they can actually, what was a great line to say, that you'll lie and you'll swear to it, right?
Yes, but if I can get my stuff to a federal grand jury, they cannot use the Fifth Amendment to wind up giving testimony. They have to tell the truth, and they probably will then, because they don't want to go to prison. Yeah. And because this is not just a forgery case, this is actually a treason case.
Oh, sure.
And that's how I filed this thing. So because the principles in this forgery case really, the forgery came secondhand. Obama lied to them as to that he was a U.S. citizen.
Oh, sure.
And that he had a birth certificate there because his grandfather told him he did, but he didn't.
All right, let me come back.
He couldn't.
Let me take it in steps again, because
about you is Crowley, right? And going to Hawaii.
Right.
And
right.
I'm like I tell you, I'm an accountant, and one thing we're taught is you don't believe anybody, you test everything, and also you follow the money trail. Now I looked up. I get wire transfers all the time for buying scanners all over the world, and sometimes they show up the same day. Domestically, they definitely show up the same day. All they had to do was send $14. That's all this thing was. The fee would have been more than the $14 to the Department of Health. They would have had it, if they sent it by 9 o'clock our time, they would have had it by the time they woke up in Hawaii 3 hours later.
Sure.
And then I looked up, UPS would have delivered to the next day to Washington, D.C. for $83. Mm-hmm. From Hawaii all the way to Washington, D.C. for $83. They didn't have to send the high-priced lawyer at, $400 or $500 an hour, $300 an hour from Seattle, first class from Seattle to Hawaii, then Hawaii to Washington, D.C. The only way you do that is that you got a suitcase full of cash and you don't want a record of it showing up anywhere. And that's the only reason I can come up with why they had to physically have her go.
Did she? Here again, this is the scenario. All of those who watched, including how the mainstream press jumped up and down when Barack Obama, unannounced at a news conference, shows his certificate of live birth, and we're led to believe that this woman, who's an attorney in the firm that is Barack Obama's law, although the guy's out of there now, but she makes this night flight and flies a red-eye from Seattle to Hawaii, picks up this COLB, and flies back with nothing more than a PDF file, which could have been sent on the internet for no money at all. I mean,
no, she didn't. She didn't have a PDF file.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But she had.
I'm sorry.
She
please.
had 2 physical pieces of paper.
Okay, but when they showed it, okay, fair enough. But is it or is it not a PDF?
2 things happen.
All right.
You have to think in terms like a typesetter. You have to think in terms of what were the deliverables that the forger gave them. The first deliverable was a white form, exactly as the hospital would give it to the Department of Health, except it had the registrar's stamp signature on it and 2 made-up stamps, and the number on it. That's what she delivered to them on white paper. Then somebody got cold feet in the Department of Health and did not want to run it through the system there. All they'd had to do was take this first deliverable, put it on the copy machine with the security paper in the copy machine, copied it, and put the stamps and dates on it and stuff like that, and we'd never know then, other than I would have seen the letter spacing, word spacing, and line spacing mistakes. So somebody got cold feet there, and it's possible it was Onaka. He didn't want to get that deep. He'd give him bad security numbers of dead babies, but he didn't want to go as far as to have a stamp on it.
Let me come. If I could pause you again.
She had to mock it up.
Right,
she had to mock the thing up with the
did
security paper in the background.
She did it, or the kid that I've dubbed Jimmy down the hall? Who did it?
No. The forger literally put her signature. She damaged or altered every letter that spelled one part of her name.
For instance?
I'm not going to reveal it, but the sheriff's office knows who it is. I'm the one who told them and discovered it.
So when I've seen this thing taken apart in layers, and I have no computer technology abilities, but Doug, I've seen this.
That's the PDF.
That's what I thought was the PDF, right?
Yeah, right. But I'm really talking about, I worked, remember, from the reporter's copy and from the other forgeries that were given to Jerome Corsi in the sheriff's office that were originals.
All right. You've seen those, or you have those?
The sheriff's office have some of them. Right. Jerome Corsi had some, and they gave us copies of it, and I examined it when I was in Arizona and scanned them in. Okay. So including the forgers.
Right. I mean, fair enough. I'm with you. So when I think
it's hers,
right? So when I think of PDF, that's just what I was shown, right? It isn't what. I mean,
right.
Explain that. Did she bring something on a night flight from Hawaii to D.C.?
She did, and we know that is that she came in on Tuesday. At night the meeting was on, the news conference on Wednesday. They copied a packet for all the newsmen. On one side of the paper was this long form that they got from Hawaii. On the back side was the short form. No problem with that. And they copied it in a black and white copier, which dropped out totally any image of the round department seal on it. That dropped out because it was never on the paper. It was not an embossed seal. That means Savannah Guthrie, in my humble opinion, lied through her teeth because there was no seal on it. The minute they copied it in black and white and it dropped out, there was no seal on it.
I see. So what?
So, and that's in the affidavit also.
As you know, they claim Kapiolani as the hospital. Was it the hospital?
We have some legitimate ones that Kapiolani is on there, and of the same period of time.
All right.
So I never listed that as one of the things because I couldn't. But
the reason I thought about Jimmy down the hall, the politically correct boy, race of father on the birth certificate it says African. African's not a race. What do you do with that?
No, I commented, but I didn't use it because Department of Health U.S. Department of Health had a list of which names are acceptable. Negro, black,
colored.
And actually I saw once Afro-American, but I think that was used later on in the 60s.
But not
so I didn't bother touching it, though.
What about 1961? My understanding from other people who have spent their lives on this,
Negro.
Well, would say Negro, and they said that they could not find another, either on either side. In other words, 3 years back, 5 years ahead, 10 years back, 10 years ahead. They could never find another black child's birth certificate that said African on it. And I had somebody in defense say, well, that's what his mother wanted on the birth certificate. I said, my mother could have asked for Martian in Pennsylvania. Doesn't mean they had to put it on there. So
no, they can't really.
Right. So
yeah,
African.
They can't really.
You believe that's phonied up to say African?
It most likely is. It's the error of the guy who did the research for it. He's also the one who screwed up on the age of the father, because he got the information probably from Harvard, and he also screwed up on something else, and I'm not going to reveal right now.
Right. So
yeah,
I look at this thing, and it has these enormous holes in the birth certificate, but how quickly, as we pointed out, the MSM just sort of jumps on this and says, Eureka, here's the final truth. So if...
Can I,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can I add about... This will explain why some of the media is basically a propaganda ministry for the far left wing of the Democratic Party, who is in control of the Democratic Party. It goes back to the TARP situation in 2008 and General Electric. General Electric owns GE Capital. GE Capital does leasing for their big equipment and stuff like that. GE Capital also got into the business of doing home mortgages, junk bonds, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And what happened was when the crash happened, they were stuck with no less than $340 billion in bad, unproducing paper. Mm-hmm. So they went to the government, Obama, to hopefully bail them out and get some of the TARP money. They couldn't get the TARP money because they aren't a bank. The Obama administration changed some rules and laws, regulations, and they were able, GE Capital was able to unload the $340 billion in bad paper and only pay $2.3 billion to FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. And that is why the banks are also not giving anybody really any interest income on their deposits, and why fees have gone up, because the FDIC insurance fees to the banks and S&Ls have also gone up because of that. It comes out to $1,129 per every man, woman, and child in the U.S. That's what you did. In essence, the Obama administration bought NBC, MSNBC, and anything that has to do with them. They bought them. That's why MSNBC is at the feet of Obama and praying to him.
Yeah, it's horrible.
They have no credentials. They have no credibility whatsoever. They're bought.
Let me do this. If you're just joining us, from forgery to treason, and this is Doug Voigt, one half of the team, looking at Obama's birth certificate. If I settled back and I said, and I say this to people, and they say they know Barack Obama's life story, I say, no, you just, like myself included, I believe I could tell the story, but I'm probably going to be wrong on a lot of different things simply because they have been so concealed. And thank you for saying that, because people that I respect always say that. What do you think the life story is? Where this guy, just ad hoc, Doug, what's his story?
Simple. One, he was given up by first he thought his father, Barack Obama Sr., but he really wasn't, and Barack Obama Sr. didn't know it. But the kid didn't know, how come my father rejects me? Doesn't call me, doesn't write. Then his mother, when he's about 9 years old, ships him back to Hawaii because she's not going to raise him. She gives him up also. Then his grandfather and grandmother raised this guy, and the father, Stanley Dunham, who wants to get close to Frank Marshall Davis, brings him over to the house 2-3 times a week, to this degenerate. So what happens, evidently, he winds up finding out that his real father is Frank Marshall Davis. Davis winds up using his pull in the Communist Party and in Chicago to get this guy, a great education in Hawaii. I mean, somebody had to pay for it. Then it was like $700-800 a month to go to that private school. No one had it other than the Communist Party, and they must have foot the bill. Then he goes to Occidental. What's this guy? The guy in Chicago. What's his name? Bill Ayer's father winds up bragging. He paid for him to go to Occidental College. And all this time, he was basically anointed. We're going to make you president, first black president and commie. And what they didn't count on, the Communist Party, because they're atheists, is that when he was in Indonesia, he became a Muslim, and they minimized the effect of Islam on Obama. In fact, he slips with an interview with Stephanopoulos and said, John McCain's not making a big deal of my Muslim faith.
Yeah, and I saw that. Yeah, many
that's
times.
honest. That's what he is.
And then
the Saudis in Egypt in an interview said he's also a Muslim. They said, we're going to have a Muslim in the White House. I have that recording on the website, ObamaForgeryBook.com. Yeah. Go listen to it.
Yeah.
So
and Stephanopoulos
this guy,
blocks for him. Stephanopoulos jumps in and blocks
for
him.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it proves my point. NBC has got a lip lock on him.
Yeah.
Okay, so this kid, his entire life was told he's going to become president. He bragged to a Marine in Hawaii. He bragged to the postman in Chicago in front of Bill Ayer's house. It goes on, and Bill Ayers, even the junior, wrote his book, Dreams of My Father. He admits to it, that he wrote it. He just wants the royalties from it. And the guy was handed this thing, and they control the Democratic Party. If you're a Democrat, you have to face the facts. Your party has been taken over by left-wing Marxists and socialists. Welcome to the party. and that's it. So the thing that was a real wake-up call was there was an Israeli psychiatrist who is a foremost expert on narcissism. I have his 2 interviews on the website. It's on the left-hand side. Everybody should listen to it. The guy is a malignant narcissist, and on the level of Hitler and Saddam Hussein and Napoleon, just fill in the blanks. And the one thing the party and others don't understand with a malignant narcissist, you cannot control them. They use people for their own ends and gains. And that's what this guy is. They didn't realize he's very pro Muslim Brotherhood, like his half-brother. And that's what's going on here. His foreign policy is the same one to promote the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood's main goal is to recreate the caliphate. That's why he's buddies with Erdogan in Turkey.
Let me do this.
He's a member of the Muslim Brotherhood.
I'm at a hard break. Yeah, that connection to his brother and how quickly his brother received tax, the exemption status, although had apparently been operating the Barack H. Obama Foundation for a couple of years, and no one ever took him down on that. And it's an amazing story. Hang on, sir. We'll come back. Again, it's one of these guys that now shows Doug Voigt from Forgery to Treason. There's a link on our website, 710knus.com. From Forgery to Treason, just a note tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. we first come out of the box about the literary agent that Barack Obama had when he first began writing, and how that agent has, again, where he clearly tells the agent he was born in Kenya, but how they have put on the disclaimer. And it's fascinating to watch this stuff, as always. So we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. And, you know, your sense of this guy, I think, is, you know, in my mind, is pretty close. Here. So now what? Will the time ever come, as they said in Shakespeare, the truth will out? Do you think we'll ever see anything along those lines?
That's why I filed the case in Seattle on October of last year. I filed it based on misprision of felony and misprision of treason. There are 2 laws that were passed the very first Congress, second session, signed into law by George Washington. It just simply says they're both basically one-sentence laws that said that if you learn of a crimes against the United States, you're supposed to report it. And they list the people you're supposed to report it to, and they both list a United States judge. So we filed it with the U.S. court here. It went to appeal to the court here didn't say I didn't have standing. They said it was out of their jurisdiction, which is not true. Congress gave it to them. Their problem for the court is They can file criminal cases and civil cases, but they don't have other miscellaneous. But Congress had given them this right for this, as well as swearing in new citizens. It's not a crime. It's just a job that Congress gave the lower court. So that's what this case that I have is all about. But because of the rules of criminal procedures, 6A, that if it is in the public interest, the judge must put it into a grand jury, submit it to the grand jury. It actually says must put it in if it's in the public interest. So the Supreme Court case is really determined, this is a first reading, it's never been litigated before, that the court has to determine what is in the public interest. Certainly, whether the President of the United States is a U.S. citizen or not, and not a foreign agent, is certainly in the public interest, considering his track record over the last 5 years has been really to destroy the United States and break the bank, as Saul Alinsky wanted to do.
Sure. But we come to this, and I get to ask this question of you and others. Will we someday know the total truth of this man's life? And so many people have invested in this guy.
Yes.
Invested in the life story. I mean, that's part of this.
And you know how it'll come out? Only with a case like this, because in a grand jury they have to tell the truth or they stay in jail. 2, when the trials happen, remember, this isn't like you're going to get 3 or 5 years in jail and you get and they'll pay you off. This is the death sentence, and this is the worst crime in American history. Have no doubt about that. These people all the principals in the case will get the death sentence, and they deserve it. But they will make deals any way they can to avoid the hangman's noose. That really focuses your attention real good.
But you're pushing, and again, as much as I love what you're doing, I think it's the sound of one hand clapping. I think that this will someday, maybe, and I'm an old guy, maybe someday, and like I said, whatever the official story is not true. The true story is I don't know, but I know it isn't the official story. Does that make sense? I know I can.
Yeah. It involves George Soros, I'm sure, because he funded a bunch of this stuff. It involves a lot of rich people. It involves a lot of left-wing communists that have power and own radio stations and TV stations and stuff like that, networks. You're right. And Wall Street, who wanted to get bailed out, and they gave him a lot of money.
Of course.
So they would get bailed out.
Well, Democrats gave a lot of money to this guy. I mean, excuse me, Wall Street gave a lot of money to these guys, to the Democrats.
The first time.
Yeah,
the first time.
Absolutely, not the
so
second
they can get bailed out.
Well, and I think you're right. I think, and that sets up this crypto-fascist insanity that we're watching this from both sides, and it's like a vice screwing in or coming in from both sides.
Actually national. It's National Socialism is what it is,
and it's or fascism. It's the corporate state.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one question as we leave. What one thing would you like to know about Barack Obama? One thing.
When did Frank Marshall Davis start putting in the workings that he was going to become president? Who did he have to go to do it?
We'll talk again. I hope tons of people go to the website, 710knus.com, hook up with From Forgery to Treason. We'll talk again as soon as next week or perhaps right after that as well. Doug Best, man, thanks for doing the work this morning. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Doug Voigt, again, another guy. So you can link to his book, From Forgery to Treason. Tomorrow, right out of the box, that woman who says, look, I can show you what they did on that bio, born.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.